Hey, Nick, thank you so much for coming on the Thrival Nutrition Podcast. How are you?
I am very well. How are you this morning?
I'm good. I'm stoked to be diving in about float tanks. No pun intended. Introduce yourself.
Pun intended. Yeah.
Introduce yourself, who you are, and what you do.
Sure. My name is Nick Janicki, and I started the first True Rest float spa in 2010. So in 2008, my wife and I heard about this on a Joe Rogan podcast. It sounded very, very cool. I have a meditation background. And we started doing some research, and we found out that there was only about 14, 15 places to float in the North American continent. So there was one place in Canada to float and 14 in the United States. So long story short, we tried it out. It was very, revived my senses. I was in a better mood. I got out of the float tank, and I just remember just having this ridiculous smile for days. I was just like, hey, what's going on? I just felt that huge euphoric boost, that like tranquil feeling you get when you have a great meditation. But food tasted better, everything was better. And on the way home, we were driving home, and I thought, wow, if someone actually made this a high-end spa concept, this could be kind of the massage envy of the float tank world. And so that's sort of our background. We got one open in 2010, February, and then started franchising in 2015. And now we have 34 locations in 16 states and about 80 sold. So there's, another 30, 40 people ready to open up in the next year or so.
That's awesome. I was just about to ask you, what brought you into this? So it was your own experience.
Oh, yeah. So really, it was a Joe Rogan video. And so Joe Rogan has been talking about this endlessly for the last 10, 15 years. So I watched his video. He described this transcendental state where he broke through a pattern, like a flower of life. He lost his ego, had this experience, came back, and talked about it. And so, of course, I watched that video and just like, I want to try that. So a lot of clients will come in, expecting that super profound experience, which you don't necessarily get, but they'll find other things. They'll find pain relief, stress relief, all that other stuff as well.
Okay. Yes. My husband's tried it. I have not yet. But he has. And he also said he left the tank and he went outside and everything he viewed it differently.
Right.
It was sharper. It was just kind of sensory overload a little bit too.
Right.
And so I can only imagine what it is, but I just want to get started with the basics on okay, what is a float tank? Are you going to drown? I'm just kidding. And then how long are you floating for?
Yeah, for sure. So basically a float tank or float pod or float chamber or whatever you want to call it is basically, at the end of the day, it's 1,000 pounds of magnesium sulfate, which is commonly known as Epsom salt, and about 200 or so gallons of water. So you're looking at a very, very, very high salt salinity to water volume. So the ocean is about 3% salt salinity to water volume. The Dead Sea is roughly 20, 25. And the float tanks are 30% salt to water volume. And so that creates this buoyancy where you're literally floating on the surface. It's totally safe to fall asleep. And so people come in for about an hour. You can do up to 2.5 hours. And you're just basically able to relax. After about 20 minutes, you cannot feel the difference between your body and the water, because it's heated to skin temperature, which is roughly 93.5 degrees. So you're tricking your brain into this theta brainwave state very quickly. And so what you hear a lot of people say is floating is as good as an hour of sleep. And now there's no research to show that, but what they're finding is that in a night of sleep, you're getting about 30, 40 minutes of theta wave activity. And you can do the same in a float pod. So I've had a Fitbit on as an example, and I got 40 minutes of theta wave activity in an hour of floating, which is insane. Wow. And so that's kind of a basic background. So a lot of people will come in for health benefits. They'll come in for overall relaxation, stress, PTSD, chronic pain is a huge one, any kind of back pain.
Yeah. I was about to say, do you have to do it on a regular basis, or can you just do one session and you can start to feel, I know it's not this end all be all. I know everyone's looking for that. Same with supplements and stuff. People are looking for that one thing that works, but obviously I could see more health benefits throughout the more you do it, but right. I guess maybe for different conditions, is it just recommended to do it more and more often?
Yeah. Our basic saying is the more you float, the better it gets. because the first couple, I mean, it is weird, right?
Yeah.
So the first couple floats, the first one you're going to get in and be like, oh, am I going to, what's going to happen? You're not fully relaxed. And so what we're finding is by the second or third float, yeah, that's when you're really able to relax.
I'm like, I don't trust this.
Exactly. That's super, super common. And people will get out, and a very common thing we hear is, I feel weird, right? And so a lot of people haven't meditated before. They haven't done, intense yoga before. They're not, let's say working out regularly. So when you have that really deep relaxation, you're going to feel weird. And what you'll come to find, that feeling weird is you feeling more relaxed than you've ever felt, right? So, yeah.
Hey, that's actually a really foreign feeling in this day and age, is feeling relaxed. So I could totally see that.
Right.
Do you feel like when you first started doing it, did you ever feel really bored? Because I feel like just a lot of people, their minds are constantly working. Hands up, that is so me. So I was just wondering, like, what if you feel bored? What if you're like, I just want to kind of get out of here, I got stuff to do?
Right. Well, I love that question, right? So that's a question we get a lot. And I have my typical sarcastic answer to that question, which I'll just deliver the line because I think it's funny. But I always say, if you're bored by you, what does that say about you? Right? And that's sort of my sarcastic response. But no, in all due seriousness, when, let's see, when something's coming to the surface of your mind, when I'm having something coming to the surface of my mind, I know that's something I need to work on. So I don't have anxiety about not being able to, let's say, enter into this deep tranquility. What I do a lot of times now is I'll have an intent when I go in and float. So I'll float when I'm at my worst, not when I'm at my best. So when I'm having my worst day, my most anxious week, and I'm a stress bag a lot. So floating and meditation is required for me, or I feel terrible. So I have to meditate every day, or I just don't feel myself. And so when I go in and float, it's basically, sometimes I'm working through something. So that whole hour, what I'll be doing sometimes is processing a creative idea. And what I'll find, I'll still get the benefits of floating physically, even though my mind's not shutting off, but then I'm able to work through the problem at about tenfold speed. So I'll be in the float pod, and I've done this before where I said, I want to be productive for this hour. And I'm exaggerating only slightly, but in my mind, it'll feel like I wrote 7 pages of a novel, and I figured out this problem. And then Tesla came to me in a dream, and he's like, oh, you got to do this to make spaceships work, or whatever. But it's like, it can be such a hugely inspiring creative experience where don't push the thoughts away, just kind of work through them.
That's very true. I feel like that's honestly some of our issue, is we're constantly like bouncing from thought to thought to thought. We are just so busy. We actually don't have time to really think about it and work through it, like you said. So I'd have to try it. It basically makes me just want one in my house, because I feel like I have to do it every day. Now, if there's only a way I could get my brain thoughts and something recording it, so I could have I don't know, it on a piece of paper or something digital of all my thoughts. So let's
Not a bad idea. I've actually done that on my phone, believe it or not. I've just pressed record on my phone. There's a little shelf, right? I've literally recorded floats.
Awesome. So,
yeah.
Okay.
You
Awesome.
can totally do that. I've even done ridiculous goofy videos in there. Now, you don't want to drop your phone because that would be bad. So I'm not condoning that, but yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, I was thinking of a way to stay silent, but somehow I wish there was something invented that could read your brain thoughts, and that way you didn't have to speak or anything, but I guess that'll have to do. So I want to get into the details and the science behind it. What is it saying about the health benefits? So yes, less stress and all that, but I love hearing the science, if there is any. Not saying that there
this is great. So floating came out in the 50s, believe it or not. And and I would say John C. Lilly was the father of floating. There were some other people at the time as well that helped him. But that's where the movie Altered States came from. It was mainly around John C. Lilly's life in the 80s. So anyone over 45 probably watched that movie. And we get that question a lot. Is this like the movie Altered States? And he kind of de-evolves in the movie into an ape or something. But the whole point is, he was a scientist. John C. Lilly was a scientist. I would say he was probably the first neuroscientist. And so this came out in the 50s, in the 60s, 70s. He started doing research. There's tons of research in the 80s, 90s. Floating kind of disappeared for about 10, 15 years in the United States. And then what we have now is the LIBOR Institute in Oklahoma. And all of that research is being reignited by Dr. Justin Feinstein. And he actually has waterproof EEG scanners that he puts on during the float, believe it or not.
Wow.
And he's able to read kind of before and after brainwave states, during brainwave states. And he's done a study, the most impressive study I've seen so far in terms of benefits is on anxiety and depression. And what he's found is if you keep the lights on during the float for an hour, and he did this with 40 participants, and you get out, it's as impactful as an anti-anxiety medication, and it lasts for up to 20 hours. If you turn the lights off, it's as powerful as an antidepressant, and it lasts for up to 20 hours. I mean, and that's some mind-boggling stuff. We have a society that's using anti-anxiety and depression medication, and now you have something that can work for up to 20 hours. With you know, the side effect is relaxation and maybe magnesium uptake, you know.
And I know you mentioned too, so like with PTSD as well, which is a type of anxiety and depression that's really severe.
That's right.
Has there been any studies on that?
There's been studies on that, and yeah, I mean, it falls into the same category to your point. Yep. So what we're seeing is he's finding that there's certain brain receptors, brain centers shutting down during the float, and there's others that are lighting up. And of course, the ones responsible for fear, anxiety, depression are shutting down. The ones responsible for euphoria, you know, a sense of renewed purpose, those are actually lighting up. So if you look at some of his research in the chart, it's amazing. All the negative emotions go down, and all the positive emotions go up.
And what part of the float do you think this is coming from? Is it being in salt water? Is it being that the sensories are deprived in the sense of like turning off lights? Like, what part of it do you think really?
It's so simple, and this is what's so beautiful about floating. It seems too easy, too simple to work, right? So from what I can tell is research is showing that it's a combination of everything. And so you have to have this kind of perfect environment. So one is you're floating and you're eliminating your body's response to gravity to some effect when you're in that environment. The second is, shutting down, of course, your senses. So your sense of sight, you can turn the lights on. You can, if you're nervous, you can keep the lights on, right? But turn the lights off at some point. No music, so no sensory input. And so what's happening is he's actually gone from calling it sensory deprivation to sensory enhancement. And so you're not really depriving yourself of anything. You're just allowing your senses to sort of be at peace and then become accentuated. And so that's when all the great stuff can happen. So similar thing when you're meditating, if you're in a savasana during yoga, right? Same kind of process of your body shutting down kind of in a listen mode or an observer mode, and then your body can heal itself. So personally, I think the human body shouldn't be ill. I think illness is an abnormal state. And so I think the body, if put into a homeostasis, could actually return to that state. And so I think that's what floating's proving. You have this perfect environment that allows the body to go back into a state of, you know, homeostasis, just perfection, and it can sort of rectify itself.
Yeah, I love that you're able to just really listen to your body at that point, because there, like you said, really isn't much to do. And it is mind-blowing to see how many people with just nutrition side of it don't even listen to their body of what it's trying to tell you, whether it's a health condition or a symptom. But they also, like, we're just so go. We're just constantly, we're on the road, we're eating, we're not even turning off our fight or flight. We're eating in this like fight or flight stage, and we're just not digesting. And again, we're just not really being in tune with the body anymore. Do you feel like, do you see people, because float tanks have to be shut completely, correct? So what if someone's claustrophobic? Is that ever an issue?
Sure, you can leave it cracked open, so you're in full control. So what I tell people with claustrophobia is you're definitely in full control. You can leave it cracked open, you can leave the lights on, the music on, and it's your experience. You know, no one's going to lock you in there or anything like that. Put sandbags on the door, but no, you're in full control. Excuse me. And so that's never an issue. Yeah.
Okay.
And I'd be curious, from your standpoint, nutritionally, what we're seeing is, you know, people that come in are, you know, usually maybe dehydrated. There's magnesium deficiencies, and so we're actually in the process of trying to figure out some of that stuff. So what we've noticed is after the float, a lot of people actually be very, very thirsty, and we're thinking that they're undergoing a detoxification process. So we're still doing research on this, but we make sure people are hydrating, after the float.
Yep.
I think that's just so critically important. So I'd be kind of curious to see, you know, in a general population sense, what is your kind of feeling on, I guess, people's overall nutrition in today's world, and especially just overall hydration?
Well, I feel like too, magnesium deficiencies are so very, very common because of the way that we've pushed the way we do food industry. Like the soil is depleted, which is where we mostly get our magnesium from. And it's just not in foods like it used to be anymore. And so, yes, we rely on supplementation, but because not even just food, but I feel like stress is one of the biggest things that we overlook. We can get the food down, we can get the exercise down, we can get every part of our life perfect, but if we're still stressed, we are not ever going to be able to get healthy. And that's in the sense of when we're more stressed, we create more of a demand in the nutrients, magnesium being one of them, vitamin C being the other. I mean, there's just so many B vitamins. And so we're kind of running up this huge mountain. We're trying to be like, I'm eating healthy and I'm exercising. And it's just like the stress is what is depleting a lot of people of nutrients. If they have, let's say, a perfect diet and they're taking perfect supplements in the world.
Wow. So you're saying that even though if you do everything perfectly, the stress will actually remove the benefits of all the other stuff.
Yes. Yes.
Wow.
And I mean, it's very indirect too with like type 2 diabetes, glucose. The more stressed we are, the more it's going to release the glycogen, which is our stored glucose, into our bloodstream. And so again, eating perfectly, eating a perfect diet a type 2 diabetic should eat. If they're stressed though, they're still going to be exposing their body to glucose that way. And so it's still going to be a constant insulin, glucose. And so I feel like stress is, if not the reason that a lot of health issues are here.
See, and so when I hear that, for me, it's interesting because floating is this nice new, it's not new, certainly it's been around since the 50s, but it gives you this opportunity where you don't have to have background in anything, right?
Yeah.
So you could have never meditated, you don't have to do yoga, you don't particularly have to work out, and it's going to help with that stress piece, and that's huge.
Yeah.
And I'm just recalling a story of someone that had, he fell off a 3-story building and broke his spine, and he had a basket in his spine. And so this was someone that was in massive chronic pain. And, you know, Kevin came in, I remember his third float, he gets out of the, you know, whatever, the room, and his wife's just kind of looking at him and he's in tears. And she's like, what's wrong? He's like, this is the first time in 10 years that I can't find my pain. I was in the shower and I was looking for my pain. I couldn't find it. And he said, you know, the thing with stress and pain in particular, chronic pain, he said, chronic pain is like a little guy in your head that kind of beats you over the head every single second of the day. And he said what the float tank was able to do was take that away, even if it was for 3 or 4 hours, and it would gradually come back. He's like, I could live a normal life. He was able to get an operation. He was able to do physical therapy. And so I think that's probably very similar with stress, is it's something so subtle, and it's just this constant little ping that we don't even notice it, and it just builds up and we think we're fine.
Yeah.
But then once you get rid of it, you're like, wow, this is how I'm supposed to feel.
Exactly. And it's funny because stress is like, that's my downfall. Like I got the food down, I got exercise down, but stress, running a business, being a mom, being a wife, I'm going back for my master's in the fall. So like my life has always been busy, and we had kids young. I was 18 when I had my son. So we had to push through that. So we've done a lot already, like in our life. And so I just feel like stress has always been a part of unfortunately, of who I am, just because I've always had a lot of things going on. So stress is something that I constantly have to work towards. A lot of people have to work towards eating healthier. Mine is, okay, how do I lower stress? Whether that's taking adaptogens, I'm definitely going to try float tanks, because I feel like it is our perceived threat in life, right? Because we look at our list and it could be really simple. Like I gotta go to grocery shopping, then this errand, prep dinner, whatever it is. I mean, it could be a stay-at-home mom, and we just, that list, that perceived threat is just like, well, there goes my day. I'm just so busy. And just to be able to have something to break that is really important.
Yep.
So is there a better time to float? Is it like morning, afternoon, evening the best, or just whenever?
You know, that's a great question. I don't have a good answer for that. I like afternoon floats and sometimes night floats. Now, the caveat is floating for me actually energizes me now. So it removes my stress, and I'm very, very calm after a float, but I'm also very energetic. So for me, I prefer to float when I don't necessarily have a whole lot of things to do afterwards, because bluntly, it'll just like ruin the buzz. So
Yeah.
for me, it's like I like to float, and that's the end of my day. I know a lot of people like to do it, and that's the beginning of their day. So it kind of depends on your personality. For me, when I'm the kind of person that when I'm chilling, I like to just chill. I only have two speeds. I have like insanity, and I want to be in a coma now, don't bother me. And so I like float towards the coma side of the day, where it's like, I just want to do nothing and just feel like great. And so what I tell people literally is, if you haven't tried floating and just try it when you feel your worst, really and truly, because it's going to work that much better. And so when I'm at my worst and I get in, after an hour I come out and I'm just like, oh my gosh, I feel so much better. Like everything I was worried about just kind of magically melts off and disappears. And even if you're having a hard time during the float, that benefit's still going to happen. You just got to stay in. Yeah.
I'm about to say, I know some people might be like, well, then why don't I just like meditate? But I feel like for me, forcing myself to be not in my environment, not in my house where I'm thinking like, all right, 2 more minutes because I got to do the dishes or something like that. Forcing myself to go to a place of business, getting inside and like, I paid for this, so I'm going to enjoy it. I think would also like force me to be like, all right, let's experience this. Yep. And not be like, oh, let me just meditate for 10 minutes in my house. Kids are running in the background. And I truly don't think I could ever get in that state of
the pod is just made in this way that it's just so perfect. The air temperature is perfect. You're tricking your brain, right? So you're really tricking your brain to think that your body is almost falling asleep. And I think that's why people, 2 to 3% have these extremely profound reactions in the pod, is because you're just in this sort of perfect state. It's really like the Matrix eggs, not with the bad thing where they're putting a cord in your head, but it's just this perfect environment for a human. It's just, a lot of people say to them, it feels like they're returning to the womb. It's that personal and it's that peaceful.
I've actually never even thought about that. That is where, we start and our comfort. So I wonder if psychologically that also is deep down embedded in our conscience of having that like warmth. And I guess, technically if we're in utero, we're drinking our own pee and stuff like that. But anyways, not doing that, but in the sense of having that warmth. That's actually very interesting. I never thought about it like that.
Well, and that's why 15% of clients, they get out and they're like, no, just kidding. They're like sucking their thumb, right? No.
Hey, no. Before you finish up, do you feel like there's anything that could stop someone from going into a float, a certain health condition that's not recommended to float?
Very few things. So we do have a waiver. If you come in and you're worried, just kind of read through the waiver. And obviously some of the big things are, if don't be on drugs or drunk or anything like that, obviously, when you come in, obviously. So just stuff like that, but just read through the waivers. If you go into a float spa, True Rest has their own waiver. I'm sure every center has their own waiver to read through, but for the most part, there's very few things that will limit a float. Even pregnancy, we have a lot of pregnant women that come in and they love it. The baby typically loves it. And the nice thing is you can lay on your back. So in later months, during the later trimesters, you're able to lie on your back. And a lot of people say, wow, the baby loved it too. And it's just a great experience for really anyone.
Yeah. I bet that would be awesome. Pregnant, getting that weight just off. Oh my gosh. I remember that so well. Awesome. Okay. So where can we find you if people want to reach out or find more about True Rest?
Yeah, for sure. So easy. Website is just truerest.com, TRUEREST.com. You can find us on social media at True Rest, on Instagram, on Facebook. And then my Instagram is just at Nicholas Janicki, if anybody wants to reach out. But we're always posting stuff. There's always deals and contests. The stores are very active. Like I said, we're in 16 states. We just ended our summer sweepstakes, where we actually gave away a $5,000 vacation voucher. And so that just ended. And so we're always having cool specials and deals. So yeah, check this out.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on today.